It's just another Marvel day. Welcome back, Fused Film fans. We're here and we're back for your one-stop shop of all things movies, blockbusters, and all that good stuff. We're coming out of the Star Wars fog. And now we're back to the MCU. And we're going to dive first into the ever-expanding world of Marvel. We're going to talk Loki today. We're going to talk the Marvels. We're going to talk about Mr. Fantastic. We're going to talk about the current state of the MCU, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. I'm super excited to get into this with none other than Mr. Vactorverse himself, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Vactor. Welcome back to the program.
Hello there.
Now, Justin, we've talked Marvel before on this podcast. We've talked Marvel on other podcasts. Our first podcast, The Entertainment Overload, all of it. Marvel has been in the DNA of what we do and what we love and what we are always excited to talk about. And I feel like we're at this state. It's November 16th, the day we're recording this podcast. How many movies has there been now? Like just in the MCU, like
there's got to be
30 plus films. Yeah. What a time to be alive. And I just want to take a step back and just acknowledge the era that we live in, because there's a 10-year-old Kevin who dreamt of this, and we're here. And you can see this little Clemson paw right here. I'm a Clemson guy, so I'm going to tie this analogy together. Since 2015 to 2020, the Clemson Tigers have been one of the most dominant college football programs in the modern era, besides Alabama. Recently, over the last 3 years, they've taken a little bit of a step back. You know, maybe it's due to just some talent acquisition, whatever it is, right? There is clearly a step back. The competition has closed the gap. The landscape of college football has changed, right? You have the NIL, you have the transfer portal. All of these things have made it harder for Clemson to continue to be dominant. Amidst that, it's created sort of a disconnect with new fans and legacy fans. The legacy fans, which make up about 98% of Clemson's fan base, are very appreciative of what Dabo Swinney has done for the program and the house that he's built and the foundation he's built and the success that he's had. So yes, is there a lull? Sure. Is there a disappointment? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that the guy in charge shouldn't still be in charge. And I say all that to say is that is almost 100% analogous to what I see happening in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the state of Marvel. Is we've had unparalleled success. We've had unparalleled heights. The MCU has done something that nobody's ever done in the history of cinema outside of Star Wars. But they've done it differently. And we've had all this success. I feel like the appreciation has been lost. And instead, flipping it back to Clemson, there's this expectation now at Clemson with the 2% of fans that we have to win every year. We have to compete for a national championship. And if we don't, we're garbage. And Marvel's the same thing. If we don't have a 98% Rotten Tomatoes and a Avengers Endgame event, then what are we doing? Why are we even here? We should just pack our stuff up and go. And I think that's where we're at right now. I think that's the apex of Marvel. And people want to, like the transfer portal and NIL, and say, oh, well, that's what's really behind this. They're saying, oh, it's just superhero fatigue. It's market saturation. It's the writer's strike. It's quantity over quality. Some of those are true. But I think we are still in a golden era of entertainment, a golden era of what people want to see. Are we in a little bit of a valley? Absolutely. Are things not 100% like they used to be? Absolutely. Are we going through a transitional period? 100%. So I want to talk about this more today. I want to get deep into this Marvel discussion with you, Justin. So that's my opening, people. That's my opening, audience. I'm looking at you. Looking at all you fans out there. That's what we're talking about today. So, Justin, I set it up. What's your initial take on this whole Marvel state?
It's very interesting to me where we're at right now because Endgame set the bar so high. It's like Clemson winning 3 national championships in a row, and then now they're, not competing for the national championship, but they're, let's say, the bowl game right below the national championship.
They're an average team. They're right in their middle, right? Yeah.
And people are, or most of the stuff that I see, I can't speak for everyone, but the stuff that I see on social media, Marvel is trash, is garbage, everything sucks now. And where in reality, everything is about average right now. I haven't seen one that I've hated. We've talked about the Quantum Manias, and we've talked about the did we talk about Guardians of the Galaxy? I can't remember.
We didn't, but we can get into some of that today. I think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was phenomenal. Right?
Guardians 3, and then I don't know if we could talk about the Sony Marvel verse as well, but Across the Spider-Verse to me is the best movie of the year, and it is a work of art, and you're not going to get that superhero fatigue conversation from people who are watching Across the Spider-Verse because it's just a good movie.
Yep.
And I think the whole superhero fatigue conversation, and that conversation, you and I know this, that conversation goes back 10 years. People were talking about superhero fatigue and there's just too much and blah, blah, blah. It's not necessarily too much because think about how many movies come out in the course of a year, in 365 days, how many movies come out, how many of them are superhero movies. And the fatigue, I don't think is because there's too many superhero movies. I think the fatigue is it's not Endgame. Every single movie is not Endgame right out of the gate. Whereas Endgame was like a 10-year, journey where it led up to it. Endgame would not have been Endgame if it hadn't had 10 years of buildup of some of those were average movies. Not every single one.
But I will say this. Before Endgame, you had the first Avengers movie. And I remember
yes,
the build up to that, right? Iron Man 2, Thor, Incredible Hulk. And Incredible Hulk was a bomb. Thor was okay, middling. Iron Man 2 even critically was kind of not great.
Right.
He had Captain America. But that first Avengers movie came out and it just blew everybody away. Oh my God, we did it. Right? And like you said, the ramp up, people get excited about these team ups, right? And the build up to the team. Okay, we got to see how are we getting to the next Avengers movie? How are we getting to the next Avengers movie? So I think if you put that in the same context of phase 4 and phase 5, I think too much time has now passed between Avengers movies. The second part of that is you've got Captain America, Iron Man, the two basically heartbeats of the Avengers, solidified by two very strong actors in Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. That for right now doesn't look like they're coming back to the MCU.
Right.
Despite rumors out there, I've seen them all. What Marvel's in trouble? They're bringing the Avengers back. None of that's been confirmed. Nobody knows. Kevin Feige said we didn't discuss that at the retreat. Whatever. So I think where I'm going with this, what I'm about to say is that, and I've said this before in this podcast, they built two amazing brands in Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. and Iron Man and Captain America. And not having those brands right now building up to the next Avengers movie, I think is one of the core things that's challenging the audiences.
Right.
Because we have to find new characters to invest in. Now,
Right.
we all know Black Panther was supposed to be one of those. The death of Chadwick Boseman has just, created that gap too. And I don't think they have figured out who that next icon of this era of Marvel Cinematic Universe is. It can't be Doctor Strange. He's just not that kind of character, and Benedict Cumberbatch's just not that guy. Maybe they hope with Captain America 4 that it's Anthony Mackie and all that. Maybe they hope that I think maybe they thought a little bit like Thor could maybe kind of take that, but Love and Thunder was divisive. So that's my biggest open question. If I have to question anything about the state of Marvel and just kind of where the backstepping is, again, equating it to the college football Clemson thing, Clemson's biggest problem is they don't have a receiver, a dominant receiver like they used to. We don't have that dominant actor and character that's the face of the MCU right now. And I think because of that, you have all of these stories. You have the streaming now that's kind of been thrown in the mix. Marvel's now having to become a TV shop on top of a theatrical release shop. So I do buy a little bit into the narrative of quantity impacting quality. But I will say this. You know who I'd like to be the face of the MCU? Loki.
Ooh.
Tom Hiddleston. And I'm going to tell you why. Season 2 of Loki may be one of the best things that Marvel has churned out since not just Endgame. Captain America Winter Soldier, the OG Iron Man, all of it. This character of Loki, this 14-year run, has been unbelievable with this season 2 of Loki. I loved season 2 of Loki. I loved everything about it. I loved the storytelling. I loved the sort of Ouroboros loop that they did this season. Kike Kwan's addition to the cast was just one of the most wonderful things. So I want Loki to be that central character. I don't know how they can make that work, especially given the ending of season 2 of Loki. But he's my guy. He's my guy now. I'm a Loki guy.
Yeah, and see, this is one of their major issues that they have. How do you put everything on the shoulders of someone who is, let's say,
on the small screen?
Well, that too, on the small screen, but also I was going the age factor. Because if they want, let's say they want the next saga, the next 5-10 years to rest on somebody, it has to be a younger person. It has to be someone who has room to grow. And Tom Hiddleston's about my age, which is not that old, but he's still, I feel like it's not like I was going to say Tom Hiddleston, Spider-Man, Tom Holland.
Tom Holland.
It's not a Tom Holland situation where he's still got. Now that would fit perfectly. Like his age is right around the right timeline for us to get about 10 more years out of him, 10 more good years. And then Spider-Man is the character. Like that's the Marvel. If you're going
he's
by
my number
comics,
2. He's my number 2 who should be the face of the MCU right now is Tom Holland and Spider-Man. Like, he's Tony Stark. He's the guy. Here's the problem with all that. He's owned by Sony. And Sony's kind of making the rules here. And, the competition of having him kind of on the sidelines so they can promote their other properties like Madam Web and Venom 3, which we'll talk about a little bit later on the podcast. But like that whole Sony thing, that deal, I think is what's preventing Tom Holland's Spider-Man, MCU Spider-Man, from really being that focal point of the MCU, because it's not a character that Kevin Feige and Disney can just snap their fingers and have come into a lot of the different films.
Yeah.
And I think that's another problem. So it's like, you don't have Black Panther, you don't have Spider-Man. So what else do you have? Well, you got Loki, who I mentioned. That would be great. But now you got the small screen issue. Not everybody's watching that show. So now, where do you go? Where do you go? So you got the Marvels that just came out. I don't know if Brie Larson's that person, and that character of Carol Danvers.
See, to me,
judging by your facial expressions,
all of these guys are good pieces. All of them are like good supporting players, but they're not the ones that you want to have the ball, at the 50-yard, in the red zone. We don't want them to win, to take it into the end zone.
They're not LeBron. They're not taking the game-winning shot, right? Yeah, 100%.
And there's so many things that are like holding Marvel back, but at the same time, like you said earlier, I don't see enough people giving Marvel credit right now, because look at DC. Look at what you could have. DC is in even worse shape than Marvel is. Like, they are terrible. Now James Gunn is hopefully gonna, bring it out of the garbage that they're in right now, but DC is in really bad shape. But when are we getting Miles Morales? When are we getting, like, there's some heavy hitters that we have not seen in the MCU yet. And what I think is going to bring the MCU back to the forefront of the conversation, like you and I have had our geek conversations for the last 15 years. I've known you the entire time the MCU has been around. Like, that was when we first met, was around the time of The Dark Knight and the first Iron Man. That was when we met. And our entire friendship we've been talking about Star Wars and MCU. And so what is going to bring it back is the X-Men. That is the thing that Marvel, that's that jewel that they have not unveiled yet. They're slowly teasing it and they're slowly sprinkling it. But
and if I have to give one criticism to Feige and the Marvel Brain Trust and stuff, this multiverse saga, which is sort of this middle saga of this anthology that we're weaving here. We had the Infinity Saga, now we're in the Multiverse Saga, and all roads point to the next saga being the Mutant Saga, right? I would have preferred the Mutant Saga be the follow-up to the Infinity Saga. Very easy way of doing it, right? The blip caused the mutation that was dormant in everybody to be active, and thus we have that era. It puts you in a position where you can do street level stuff, you can do cosmic level stuff, and you have a Civil War II where it's mutants versus Avengers. You have all of that, and it builds towards whatever that next thing is. And then you cap it all off with this multiverse thing where it's like, perfect. Okay, now you got people coming in from different universes and Kang and all this kind of stuff. And I think this multiverse thing is asking a lot of our audiences that are not comic book fans.
Right.
And, I'm not saying that's a detriment. Again, I'm not saying that that's going to kill everything. But it is, we've talked about this before. the first iteration of the MCU, the Infinity Saga, people, oh, okay, different color stones, totally get it. They all have different powers, makes sense. I'm on board, you know. But now you start getting time travel and multiverses, and well, what the hell's Wolverine doing there? Wait a minute, that's Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. Like, what Deadpool? Like, are they even here? Like, and who's that? And is that the same Daredevil from Netflix? I'm really confused, And so and again, I use my dad. He's always like the butt of the joke here in these kind of conversations. But if my dad can't follow it, then you've lost 80% of your audience,
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think there's also another, like I said, there's a lot of strings that are pulling at Marvel right now. Another thing is the real life actors age. Comic book characters do not. They are
That's right.
perpetually in their 30s. Like Peter Parker's been in his 30s for 50, 60 years now. And I've always, this entire Infinity Saga, in the back of my mind, I was always saying, man, what are they going to do when these guys are either too old or they get bored of playing the role and they're just like, I don't want to play this character for the next 20 years. What are they going to do? Because they can't keep holding them, in this Ouroboros loop of the characters never age. So we're going to see what Marvel's plan is very soon, but it's going to be interesting to see how they reconcile with that. Moving on to the next, maybe it is passing on the torch to, Anthony Mackie or whoever the next. If they, it seemed like they were trying to do it with Riri Williams for Iron Man, but I don't know what's going on with that show now, and I don't. She doesn't have the charisma of Robert Downey Jr. She's not going to hold Robert, like they're just not. She's not going to hold up the mantle of Iron Man, even though she is kind of doing that in the comics. It's just not the same in real life because Robert Downey Jr. casts such a large shadow over everything. It's
Yeah.
it's going to be very tough for them to come back from losing him.
I'm gonna throw a data point out there. I was gonna share my screen, but having some technical problems. Culture Crave sent out a Rotten Tomatoes scores for all the MCU projects to date. And I'm looking at this, and almost every single Marvel film has a 70 plus Rotten Tomatoes score, with the exception of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 movies. That's 7 out of how many films? 30 something movies?
Yeah.
I mean, if you were a Hollywood insider building a franchise and somebody told you from the get-go that 80+% of your movies were going to be critically acclaimed or have positive sentiment by critics and audiences alike, and they're saying, wait a minute, 30, like that's out of 30 films? Heck yeah. I mean, so this whole conversation that, like, oh, the Marvel's dying and it's dead and all this kind of stuff, like, there's bound to be some bombs here and there and some letdowns
Right.
here and there, stuff like that. Now, I know there's probably somebody that's going to listen to this and say, well, Kevin, those Rotten Tomato scores are inflated and there's probably a lot of like backhand dealing and things like that. And Rotten Tomatoes got called out about all that. Blah, 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 blah. I don't believe it, or I don't really care. The data is the data. That's the data. Let's not be emotional about it, right? Christopher Nolan is the only person that has movies that rate higher or rate in the same scale as the Marvel films. And it's a smaller sample size, and they're not franchises, right? Outside of the 3 Batman films. So it's like, compare this to Star Wars. Like, do the Star Wars movies have the same range? Probably not. Like, I don't remember the prequels getting rated that high when they first came out. So, like, my point is, and I'll shut up about it, is like, these MCU movies, like, even the worst of it, it's not like a franchise killer in my opinion. So now somebody's going to
Yeah.
say, "Oh, well, it's not about what's come before; it's what's happening now, right?" And the trend now is not great. Okay,
The only thing I can think even close to Marvel's longevity and the quality is Pixar. And they've started to, like, Pixar was, every
mm,
movie was in the 90 percentile.
yeah,
Recently they've started to come down, and it's just the law of averages. Like, you can't keep up that level of quality. There's too many things that could go wrong in a movie, that it was amazing they had that run that they had. And
mm,
Marvel, I think, is the same way. It's, and like you said, it's going to be peaks and valleys. It's not going to
yeah,
be all peaks, and it's not going to be all valleys. There's going to be ups and downs, but Marvel has done a fantastic job so far. And like I said, the biggest um, thing that you can look at is who is the competition. DC is the only one that we can put an analog to, and they've been terrible. Like, with very few exceptions, most of the DC movies have not been fantastic. So look at what Marvel's done. Look at what DC's done. And it's like, how can you say that Marvel is bad or they're terrible when they have no competition pretty much? So
yeah,
their
hundred
competition is
percent.
themselves.
So we were talking about who's that star, who's that beacon of the MCU. I've got a guy for you, Pedro Pascal.
Ooh wee.
Yes, that's right, folks. It's been rumored, maybe even possibly confirmed at the time of this podcast, that he is Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, for the upcoming Fantastic Four movie. I never considered him as a candidate for that role. It just, for whatever reason, it just didn't penetrate my brain like as a thought. And it's one of those things where I'm like, now I can't see anybody
that
other than him as Reed Richards. Like, how
Mm,
great is that casting, Justin?
that is fantastic. And do you watch The Last of Us on HBO?
I've seen, yes, I saw the first season. Obviously, Mandalorian fans. We've talked about that on this show. Uh,
He's one of the best
never
current
saw
actors.
Narco or any of those other things that he's
Oh,
been
I
in.
haven't. Yeah, I haven't seen Narco.
He was in Wonder Woman 2.
Yeah, which that was just a
Things
bad
like
movie,
that.
but yeah.
It was
I've
it
never
was bad.
seen somebody say he was bad. Like, I've seen him be in bad movies, but I've never seen someone say he was bad. So I was like you. I think the reason why you and I both just didn't even think about him, because there's a lot of great actors, but
Hmm.
we're thinking, who looks like Reed Richards, who looks like that character, and he does not. Pedro Pascal does not look like any drawing that has ever come before for Reed Richards, but that's not the most important thing. They can
Yeah.
dye his hair, they can make him up, whatever. The most important thing is he a good actor? Can he bring something to the role? Look at Tom Hiddleston. He didn't look like Loki. He didn't look like any drawing of Loki, but 15 years later, he's like one of, like, you, he's your guy. He's the cornerstone of the MCU, and he's one of my favorites. So I think it does boil down to who is the best
Well,
actor.
and I think it gives you too an idea of possibly the tone of this Fantastic Four movie.
Mm.
Um, with that kind of character, Pascal brings a ton of range, right? Comedy all the way down to the drama and the intensity. He's a character actor. I mean, let's put him in the same vein as guys like Diego Luna as Andor. So like,
Mm. Yes.
what kind of Reed Richards are we going to get in this story? It makes me wonder when
Right.
you cast somebody like that. One of the other rumors of casting, and this hasn't been confirmed, is Vanessa Kirby playing Sue Storm. Um, I want to see this pairing now.
Mm.
She's gorgeous. She's got the Sue Storm look, and to pair her with Pedro Pascal, I think would be very fantastic, to use those words. Yet pun intended. Um, and I will say, I think the Fantastic Four has the potential to be that sort of new cornerstone of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? Almost kind of a sub team up to the Avengers, maybe even a replacement for the Avengers. Um, and with that kind of cast, you really can do a lot of dynamic things moving forward. And I think it should get people excited. I really do.
I was going to
Um,
say, what could bring people back to the theater? Because we saw with the Marvels, the box office was terrible for people just not caring. And oh, I'll wait for it on Disney Plus. And I was thinking, the X-Men and Fantastic Four, if you do those right, there's enough already pre-installed fan base. People will go back to the theaters to see a fantastic X-Men movie and a Fantastic Four
You
movie.
bring up a good point. I should have brought this. We should have talked about this earlier when we were talking about the state of MCU. I do think some of the just one of the underlying impacts of the MCU right now is just we're still coming out of COVID. The world is slowly getting back to what life was like pre-COVID. I'm in marketing and home services, doing lead gen for home service companies. And, we've experienced substantial growth over the last 3 years due to COVID because people have been at home.
Hmm.
But that world is normalizing again back to pre-COVID levels, right?
Hmm.
And so I think people are starting to get back to the I want to go to the movie theater, I want to get out with my family, I want to go to the amusement parks, I want to get back out there and do those things. Obviously, economic factors like inflation and things like that don't help. People are being very stingy on their wallets right now and where they want to spend their dollars, and a movie may not make sense. If bread is super expensive at the grocery store, that means popcorn is going to be really expensive at the movies, and so it's not just the ticket price, right? So
Right.
I think some of those things are going to normal out the economic pieces of it, and that's what's going to drive people back in theaters. I also think too, I got to give Disney some finger pointing. I don't think they marketed the Marvels very well,
Hmm.
to be honest with you. I don't remember seeing it marketed most places I'm like, you're like, I'm the audience, right? Like, why am I not seeing any ads? I'm not seeing a lot of trailers here and there. I'm just not seeing this movie being heavily marketed like a Marvel film. It's almost felt like it's been a quiet release. Like they sort of got
Hmm.
those numbers ahead of time and said, well, it's probably just going to be a soft launch here, week opening. So we might as well just kind of not invest any more marketing into it because we won't see the return.
Yeah.
And
Well,
yeah,
also, I don't know if you remember this. When that first trailer came out, it was the most disliked trailer in YouTube history or something like that. Like it was a
oh wow,
huge amount of
yeah,
people that they were like already had it out for the movie because oh, there's three women. They can't hold a movie. They can't hold my attention. So a lot of toxic people came out. So I'm thinking even back then, that was like 7 months ago, they were already being set up for failure. But on top of that, we had the writers' strike, we had the actors'
actors
strike,
strike, yeah.
so they couldn't like the actors couldn't promote it, so that hurt
Mhm.
it as well. But yeah, there's a like I said, all these things are just there's a ton of strings that are pulling at Marvel for them to fail, and it's like they've weathered it to a certain extent, and they've stayed neutral. I think they've stayed even, but
Mhm.
a lot of people are just like, oh, they're done. Marvel's never gonna come back. But
I will say this: this is an interesting thing to think about. Do you? And it's the cause versus correlation argument, right? Like, so ice cream sales and shark attacks are up at the same time. Why? Right? Did the first Captain Marvel movie succeed because it was a good film, b well casted, well done, or was it just the timing of when the movie was released because it was building up towards Endgame? Um, I
yeah,
just we'll never know the true answer to that question because of all of those variables. But I just wonder, you know, did that movie benefit from all of that going on? Whereas this one, it's almost kind of the opposite, where it's not benefiting from anything, right?
yeah,
Timing, the release date, the SAG, like you just said, the SAG-AFTRA strike, the writer strike, the economic environment. It's just like almost like a tale of two totally different worlds
Right.
between the first Marvel film and the sequel. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's ridiculous that people would think, oh, three women can't carry a movie. What world are we living in? What era? What time?
Right.
It's 2023. Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in a world where Barbie just broke box office records. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's just stupid. It's just
Yeah.
stupid, small, narrow-minded people.
And it just it's just crazy the amount of but I guess another thing, being a YouTuber now, I've seen a lot of toxic comments that I would not have seen normally. And so I don't know if that was another factor of, okay, it's on YouTube, and that's where all these thumbs down are coming from, is all these people uh, ganging up on the film. But I think you make a very good point about the environment in 2019 versus 2023, which is crazy because not that long ago, but that Captain Marvel movie made $1 billion, and I think people in 2019 were thinking, "Oh, I have to see this because it leads into the next thing, and it leads into what Marvel's planning." With this one, with the Marvels, I don't think people are thinking, "Oh, this is essential to whatever the Kang Dynasty becomes or whatever Secret Wars becomes." I don't think people are thinking that. And having seen the movie,
I'm one of
I
those
don't think it
people.
I don't think it does. I don't think it there's um I'm sure you've seen you've heard about the mid-credit scene.
Yeah,
Um
we'll spoiler alert for the fans. Beast, shows up. Kelsey Grammer's Beast. Um, yeah, so I'm very aware of the mid credit scene.
so
I
it feels like
actually
it's setting that up.
Yeah, I actually didn't see the movie. I read the plot synopsis on Wikipedia and spoiled it for myself because uh, it is one of those where I honestly was not interested in the movie. The trailer didn't interest me. There was nothing about the plot or anything that interested me. You hit the nail right on the head. I did not see how this movie was going to connect to the future Avengers film and how it would build up to that. So I'm like, oh, I'll just catch it when it comes out on streaming, because it's kind of like that filler episode on Smallville or
Mm,
something like that, where it's
yeah,
like it doesn't impact your series finale uh, watching. Like you're not going to miss
right.
much, and you always can go back and watch it on the DVD. You know,
Yeah.
that's kind of how I
And
feel about it.
it's like I said, it's not, I wouldn't say it's essential for whatever's coming next. But also, I wonder if Marvel kind of shot themselves in the foot because of the success of how they planned out those first three phases and how everything led into each other. They've preconditioned the audience to expect everything to
To
matter.
connect,
And
yeah.
so, yeah, and every Disney Plus show does not connect. Like, we're looking for every single connection. WandaVision, oh, there's a Quicksilver. Oh, he's just Ralph Boner. Like, not everything is a connecting piece to a movie. Now, I would love that as a comic book fan. That would be fantastic if it did. But it's just there's too many moving pieces with television and movies. That's why it hasn't been done before, because there's just
Mm-hmm.
it's so many things, moving parts to it, that it's almost impossible to have everything connect. It was actually kind of surprising that they were able to connect Agents of Shield and Winter Soldier to the point where when Winter Soldier came out, stuff that happened in Winter Soldier, you saw it affect Agents of Shield like on the next episode.
And so you bring up a good point. If they were able to do that, then why not the other? I think what happened is, and I think Rob Keyes had mentioned this on a previous podcast on Fuse Film, is this is where the stakeholders, the shareholders,
Yes.
they get involved in the
Yes.
pressure to meet those quarterly earnings for the Disney Corporation and the commitment that Iger and Chapek made with streaming and the Disney Plus success
Yes.
that
Yes.
forced Kevin Feige, to go to the vault and say, well, I've been thinking about a She-Hulk and I've been thinking about Moon Knight. Haven't really figured out how to get these people out there. But yeah, let's just do streaming series. And then all of a sudden here we are. And so it was, again, it was a reactive um, situation. And you're absolutely right. The fans are conditioned to believe that everything matters. I like the way you phrase that. Not just connects, but matters. And that's not necessarily the truth. And then, you had the Netflix Marvel movies that
Right.
was all pre this. And it
Right.
was sort of understood that they were kind of like an Elseworlds thing. They didn't really follow the MCU at all. They're just kind of outside it. Um, but Agents of Shield, it was like I remember, like I was tuned in every week to that show, waiting for the connections. The very first episode, Nick Fury's there, Coulson's back. How are they going to explain this? All the way to the finale and how it tied right into Winter Soldier and the impacts that Winter Soldier events had on season 2. But eventually, that show started to kind of go its own way, and so it's canon, but it's not canon. You
Right.
know.
And then you
I'm
also
still hoping
have,
for now with the multiverse, like the Agents of Shield cast to show up in a movie or something. It's
they
like,
could. It's
yeah,
possible.
they very well could.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like we're talking out of both sides of our mouth. Like going back to, I think the bottom line is, yes, we acknowledge that Marvel has a lot of problems and a lot of challenges, and some are self-inflicted, and some of them are external. But to me, that's just a growing pain situation that any life company or business or product or whatever hits when it's in a certain life cycle stage, and they're navigating those waters. Like you said, I think, if you really take a step back, they're weathering the storm. It's very neutral. They'll come out of it and there'll be something new and exciting and different to get everybody back. And we'll go back and look at this moment and say, well, it wasn't that bad. Um, and I think that's where we're going. But for me, I think the bottom line message, and this is to you, the audience, like I said out there at the beginning of this podcast, is appreciate it. Appreciate it. Don't let your expectations diminish the appreciation that we should all have, not for Disney, not for the greed piece of it, that all that stuff, but appreciation for Feige and the people
Mhm.
that are involved in these movies and the smart people that are sitting there trying to figure out ways to tell these stories. I mean, I feel bad for the Secret Invasion creative team. They got dealt a bad hand. It's like a lot got put on them, and you know, written about how they did a shitty job about the whole thing. And it's kind of like you can only control what you can control, and
Right.
they had to take a bad situation and make the most out of it. So I would just tell you, people, appreciate what we got, because when it's no longer there, what are we going to do? Now let's move on. So we talked about the Marvels. I want the audience to get your feedback really truly on the movie. I didn't see the film. What did you think of the film? You mentioned that it's not essential reading, so to speak, but was it a good movie? Give us the lowdown. Just
So walking out of the theater, the the only thing I could think about was my experience and my time with the movie was fun.
okay.
Everything that was happening during the movie, I was just kind of bouncing off the actors' charisma and their interplay. The three actresses playing each one and switching each time they use their powers, they would switch locations. So that kind of dynamic was fun the whole movie. But what you were saying about what didn't interest you, right? The story and the plot, those were the worst part of the movie. And after it's over, when I look back, I was like, that was a boring plot. That was a
Mm,
boring story. I don't care about that story that they told. Now, where those characters, the journey that they went on and where they were at the end of the movie is different from where they were at the beginning of the movie. And so, okay, that journey is kind of fun. Um, Samuel Jackson is a completely different character than he was in Secret Invasion. Like those two Nick Furies are you would think they're variants of each other because they just in this movie in Captain Marvel or
Are
sorry in
they?
the Marvels
Are they variants?
in the Marvels he's every line is a joke. Every single line he says is a punchline of a joke, and that's the only reason he's in this movie. Like coming out of Secret Invasion, and then this goes back to the everything has to matter, everything has to tie together. Secret Invasion, what happened in that show, nothing from the Marvels ties over to Secret Invasion, nothing from Secret Invasion ties over to the Marvels. Completely separate, like nothing matters to those two shows or to those two properties. But I liked it just because there were a lot of fun action scenes. Like I said, switching I got to give it up for the choreography of every time one of them was about to use their powers on one enemy and then they transport to the other person's location and they're using it on another enemy. Like they did a great job with the choreography of all three actors. But again, just the storyline is I'm sure you've probably seen the memes. The storyline is basically or the plot is basically the Spaceballs plot. Like we have to get air back to Druidia. We have to get the air. Like that's the whole plot. It's like, okay, that's kind of boring. And you're coming off of all of these great villains, and then um, no disrespect to Tom Hiddleston's wife, who plays the main baddie, but that was not the person that I want to see. That's not like a Thanos level threat. It's just like, she's kind of like a clone of Ronan, the Accuser from Guardians 1. Like she's got a purple hammer and she's a Kree. And it's like, that looks like what he was in the other movie. So
Yeah,
that was my thoughts.
I just assumed he was the like she was the daughter of Ronan or something like that.
I mean,
Or
it very well could have been like if
yeah.
they had said that, I wouldn't have batted an eye. I wouldn't have
Yeah.
thought anything less. But
So it
they just
sounds like
didn't
the
give
best
her.
part of the entire film was the mid-credit scene and
Yes,
the
the
mutant drop. Um,
the actually even the pre. Did you hear about the pre-credit scene with Iman Vellani setting up the Young Avengers?
yeah, I saw that she
I
reached
really
out
liked it.
to Kate Bishop, played by Haley Steinfeld from the Hawkeye show. Um, yeah, and it seems kind of funny considering Marvel went out of their way to say, well, there's no plans for a Young Avengers yet. Uh, I think that may not be true. Going back to one of your statements that you made, like the actors aren't getting any younger. Chris Hemsworth is not getting any younger. Physically, he's not going to be able to do this much longer. I mean,
Yes.
it's almost sort of shocking to me that Hugh Jackman is coming back to play
Oh
Wolverine at
yeah.
his
Oh,
age,
I was
and
shocked when they said
he
that.
was very open about how the physical demands of playing Wolverine are just significantly challenging for him and
Yes.
make it very difficult for him to want to take on new roles. And
Oh
like
yeah.
I just saw the other day, like Ryan Reynolds was on his Instagram, he was touting his trainer for Deadpool, and how it helped him break through a lot of injuries from doing his own
Hmm.
stunts and things like that. So it's like the physical aspect that these guys put their bodies through for our enjoyment, to play these characters. And it's not just them; it's the stunt women and stunt men that also portray these characters. I can understand and appreciate why Chris Evans is taking time away and may return, may not return. I mean, I think there's hope one day that Chris Evans. I think he even said if the story is right, if it's the perfect scenario, he would come back and do Captain America, Steve
Hmm.
Rogers. Um, but that's a good way of answering the question, because perfect. I don't know if there is a perfect,
Right.
right?
Right.
Although I do hold out hope that I'm going to be sitting in the theater, and all of a sudden the screen goes black, and Chris Evans, Steve Rogers is there,
Oh
and
yeah.
like, can you imagine the YouTube viewings of that, where people, people screaming in the theater, similar like the
Yes.
Endgame Avengers Assemble moment. Like, can
Right.
you imagine what that would be like? Like, I think it would be unreal. It like Hayden Christensen returning as Anakin Skywalker doesn't even like reach the same levels as that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
so
I think there's no way that they do not have Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. appear in Secret Wars. Like there's no way to me that they Disney if they do, if they let that movie go on without them showing up with a Avengers Assemble, something where the multiverse of Avengers are coming in the same way on your left, like the same way. I can't see them not repeating that, because how many times have you and I know Hollywood just beats the drum until it's dead. Like, oh, that was successful. Okay, more. They want more. There's no way that they do not make the deal to bring back even the core five, or the core Avengers that were in the first movie. I think people not seeing them for 5-10 years and then you see them again,
yeah,
that reaction is gonna your mind is gonna blow.
yeah. Now, well, here's what we do know. We do know that there is going to be less quantity, more focus on quality coming. Um, we saw reports earlier of Daredevil Born Again, the initial pilot being scrapped, and a lot of the work that had been done on the season, the new season being scrapped, to go back to the drawing board and say, how can we make this better? I think they've now announced that there's now a real true TV executive in charge of the Disney Plus TV projects, show Bibles, um, true writers' rooms, things like that. So the again, this life cycle stage, there's been a lot of learning and in growth, significant expedient growth. And so the stability's coming. We will see it. All right. We've talked about the Marvels. We've talked about the state of the MCU. We talked about Pedro Pascal, Reed Richards. I want to wrap up the show talking about Loki season 2 for a minute. What was your take on the season? What was, I mean, because we didn't do any review episodes like we did Ahsoka, and there was some intention behind that. I really wanted the season to play out and really get it, like kind of almost review it like a movie. So here's our opportunity to do that. I Before you answer the question, Justin, like I said, Loki's my guy. I love season 2. The stamp that they put on the character of Loki. It's like we've gotten so many good Loki moments. His death in Endgame, to that previous Loki from the Battle of the New York coming back as a variant, and living a different sort of life, to sort of be now this god of time, god of stories, as they put it in the comics. I am just like, I was very floored how they did that, and it wasn't just how they treated his character, Owen Wilson's Mobius, the character of Sophie, Casey, our guy, like he had such good character development this season. That was just a wonderful season of television, but more importantly, a great use of development of a character that has always, forever, just always been kind of a bad, selfish guy, you know. So
Yeah, that was
kudos to the Loki
fantastic.
team. Yeah, I loved it.
I was watching an interview with Tom Hiddleston, and he was talking about his journey as an actor with the character, and it's like he was on the same journey as the character, and from that, he thought his journey was over after Infinity War, and it was like he had said goodbye to Kevin Feige and all the executives. He said he sent him notes. Oh, thank you for letting me play this character and blah blah. Then it's like 8 years later, he's still playing it, whatever. And I thought that was. I don't think we're ever going to see that again. I don't think we're ever going to see somebody do two character arcs, like two different times. He went from a bad guy to a good guy, somebody you didn't like to somebody you love by the end of his arc in
Mhm.
the movies and in the TV show. So it's like that's crazy to me that they were able to do that. So that's number one, fantastic. I really enjoyed this second season. There were some problems that I had, and I think everything stems from it just being 6 episodes. If they had, let's say, maybe 12 episodes, and they had padded out a little bit more of some of the side characters, that would have been, to me, perfect. They kind of focus on Loki and disregard Ravonna Renslayer, Miss Minutes, Victor Timely. Like, there's a bunch of characters that I was like, oh, B-15, Brad, like Doc's Rent, like all these people you thought earlier in the season, oh, they're gonna have something. They're gonna have some storyline get paid off later. And then it turned out, oh, actually the last the last three episodes, it was just on Loki. And that's
Mhm.
fine. It's Loki's show, but why even set up those characters? Um, so to me, if they had just extended it out a little bit, I felt like they just were under too much pressure to be like, oh, we got to get this Loki story done.
Do
But
you think there's a Loki season 3?
man, I would like there to be, but I think they put such a great bow on this. The ending of it is, to me, so perfect. I don't really want to see them mess with that, but he's another one that I want to see in Secret Wars. I want to see them like him and Thor have a scene of like,
I've been thinking about that the whole time. Like, how great would it be to have this reuniting moment where the Thor that we know has already dealt with the death of his brother, and like, you know, knowing that his brother never really, you know, he redeemed himself, but not like redeemed himself the way maybe that Thor wanted him to.
yeah. And even
To then,
his last line
yeah,
of what he says, it was like, I know what type of god I want to be. That was from the first Thor movie. He says that
mhm,
to Odin, and he has a completely different, like, in the Thor movie, he didn't get it. Like, he didn't understand the gravitas of that.
mhm,
And then now he does. In Loki, I know what type of god I want to be. I want to be that for you. And he's, instead of being selfish, he's being selfless and sacrificing for everyone in the galaxy. And to me, like, on multiple timelines, that's just like, I can't think of a better. It's the same as Iron Man. I am Iron Man. Like, you can't. I don't think you could do a better ending. And even though I
mhm,
think they are going to bring him back, I think we should probably have some, like, some stakes to it. It doesn't mean anything if they're just going to bring him back. Like, kind of have him say goodbye, and that's his sacrifice, and that's the end. And that's, to me, this is a perfect finale. Like, that, I had goosebumps on my arms at the end, when he was climbing up the stairs and his outfit is coming off and his horns are coming out. Like, that to me is one of the best shots of the entire MCU. Like you were saying, it's not just of Disney Plus, it's not just of this phase. This is of everything that in the whole history of the MCU. This show has brought us some of the best moments of the entire saga. So, oh, and I didn't even talk about He Who Remains. This is what I wanted out of Quantum Mania. This is the Kang. Like, this is the guy that, like, I am scared of. This is the guy that he's already like 10 steps ahead. He's already beaten you and you don't even know it. Oh, you haven't figured that out yet? Like, all of those things, I feel like this version of Jonathan Majors is why I fell in love with him in the first season, and why
mhm.
I was really hoping that this Kang storyline would
Yeah,
be
you had
fantastic.
texted me and said I'm more scared of this
Oh
than
yeah.
I
Yeah.
am the one that we saw in Quantumania, and you're right.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
I was legitimately disturbed, and not like in a horrific way, but just that scene with him and Loki that's replaying the season 1 finale, and like, he he's, wait, you haven't figured this out yet? I knew you were time slipping. Like, and it's like, oh, come on. Like, what? And it's just,
How
very
do you beat
cool.
that guy? Like,
Yeah. How do you beat
that's
that
why
guy?
Thanos was so scary to me. Also, was like, if he's got the Infinity Gauntlet, he has all the stones. You can't beat him. Like, there's how do you beat him? They had to go back in time and beat another one. So that's the same thing with this Kang. It's like, that's what makes a great villain. Is like, I cannot tell you how you would beat this guy. So
Hmm. Yeah, 100%. Well, I think we've talked a lot. I think we've talked through it all. I believe in in the MCU. I believe in Kevin Feige still as the leader of that, but just also the people he has around him, the talent that
Oh
goes in
yeah.
and out of that organization. Um, they're going to find that RDJ character, guy or girl, doesn't have to be a guy. You know, they're going to find that character to center the MCU around. We got a lot of things to look forward to. We got Deadpool. We've got, you know, the impending mutants, which again, Deadpool kind of ties into that. We've got the Captain America film coming. There's a lot of MCU projects to look forward to. I will give Marvels a chance. I can't wait to watch it. I may go to the theater and see it,
It's
just to
if
get
you don't
out.
have anything else to do, at the over the weekend, and there's
You
no
mean
other
watching
movies you want to
Clemson
see.
football?
Well, if there's no other, if the Clemson game's over, it's a fine watch.
Yeah,
Also, this is like the perfect type of movie that if it comes on FX or comes on cable and it's playing, it's like, okay, this is a good one to watch.
yeah.
It's
Who's
one of those
another?
ones that
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's one of those ones that you could probably miss the first 10, 20 minutes of it and come into the story. You're like, oh, okay. I can, well, I would watch this from this point on. Like, I don't have to be there at the beginning to know everything.
Yeah. One thing we didn't get a chance to talk about, and we're running out of time on the show, so we'll have to table it for the next episode. I do want to get into the Sony Marvel verse.
Yes,
It's very
yes.
interesting to me. I'm not like I've never been super psyched about any of those movies like that have come before. Like I thought Mobius was terrible. I didn't even get through the first like hour. Um,
I didn't even watch it. That's how
yeah.
bad it was. Like,
I thought the Venom 1 and 2 movies were okay, but like they were a little campy in
yeah.
a lot of ways. Um, and so now you got Craven coming. You've got Madam Web. You got all these movies in that world that are coming, and I don't know. I'm not really excited about any of them. I think the only thing that's really landed for me has been the Spider-Verse films. Um, they're fantastic, and I think a lot of it probably is just the animation
Yes,
and
yes.
how they that style. It's a very artistic um, project that I think is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And you owe it to yourself if you haven't seen it to go see those movies. They're on Netflix. Check them out. So, in terms of coming soon, I was going to read through this. So we've got, let's see, we've got What If season 2 coming this December. We've got Echo coming in January, which looks like a hard R type show. If you've seen the trailer, Kingpin, we get to kind of see a little bit more of the MCU version of
Yeah.
Kingpin. We've got Spider-Man freshman year coming. We've got X-Men
I want to see that.
97.
I want to see that.
Which, by the way, I've had this theory forever that the X-Men 97 is the version of X-Men we're going to see in the Marvel Cinematic
Ooh.
Universe. And I think it's going to be the multiverse deal that's going to bring them
Mm,
in, right?
nice. Yeah.
Because ever since I saw the pictures of Deadpool 3 of Deadpool and Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, and he's in the classic, blue and yellow
Mm-hmm.
Wolverine getup.
Yes.
I remember I texted Rob Keys and I said, dude, that's X-Men 97. There's no way it's not. And I don't see a lot of people talking about that online, but that's my theory. I think Deadpool 3 is going to confirm that, which that comes out in July next year. So next year, Deadpool, we
That's
get
technically the only
it's
MCU
the
movie that's
only
coming out.
MCU movie coming out next year. Supposedly, we're getting Agatha Darkhold Diaries coming out in the fall. And then we get into 2025, and that's going to be Captain America Brave New World, the Fantastic Four, Thunderbolts, Blade. So we go from one movie next year to one, two, three,
Ooh-wee.
four
I love it.
films in
Yeah.
2025. And then it all culminates with the 2026 Avengers King Dynasty and then Secret Wars in 2027.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, the only thing that's not in here and is Spider-Man. And I just Got to get a Spider-Man out there. Got to get a Spider-Man.
Yeah. We don't want to wait until Tom Holland looks like Harrison Ford in Indiana Jones 5. Come on, we got to get him now.
We got to get him now. And we're going to end on that note. Bring us our web crawler, Kevin Feige. Find a way.
Yeah.
Find a way. Let's get him. Let's get him. All right, Mr. Vactor. Like I said earlier, there's nobody in the world I'd rather talk Marvel with than you, my friend. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you to all of our Marvel fanatics out there. Remember, appreciation is the name of the game, not expectation. So go support your local theaters, support your films. Let's keep the industry moving. We love it. We love these stories. It's not just for us, it's for our kids. Let's do it. Have a fantastic life. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Peace out. Boom. Good stop. There you go.